Hey there, sci-fi lovers. Welcome to our channel, where the universe unfolds and the impossible becomes real. If you're as passionate about the unknown as we are, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us create more mind-bending adventures just for you.
In the shadowy corner of a bustling alien spaceport cantina, two figures sat across from each other, their voices low amidst the ambient hum of the crowd. The cantina was dimly lit, the overhead lights flickering intermittently as if to match the uncertain mood of its patrons. Alien conversations filled the air, a mix of languages and dialects from across the galaxy, punctuated by the clinking of various species drinking vessels. Carvix shifted uncomfortably in his seat, the metallic plates of his armor scraping against the worn leather of the booth. His large, insectoid eyes darted around the room, taking in the other patrons, mercenaries, smugglers, and a few dubious-looking traders. The walls were covered in holographic advertisements for off-world bounties, flickering images of wanted criminals promising untold rewards. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices, mingling with the sharp tang of ozone drifting in from nearby plasma refineries. "What? The target is a human?" Carvix repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. No, I heard you correctly, but... Are you serious? That's a level of idiocy I didn't think was possible in this galaxy. I thought the Crimson Reavers could eliminate any target. Thalrex, a hulking figure with a carapace that shimmered under the dim light, hissed in frustration, his mandibles clicking. He was an enforcer for the Reavers, known for his cold efficiency and ruthless tactics. Keep that name to yourself around here, you fool. We've avoided using it ever since the catastrophe with the Velker Dominion. We don't speak of that name, especially not in these parts. Carvix leaned in, undeterred. He was smaller than Thalrex, but what he lacked in size, he made up for in tenacity. I'm not interested in your past failures. What I need is for you to take out this human. I've heard all the warnings, but they don't scare me. Do the job, and you'll be rewarded beyond your wildest dreams. Thalrex narrowed his multifaceted eyes, his tendrils flicking in agitation. We don't accept contracts to kill humans, Carvix. If you're so desperate, find another group. But I'll tell you now, none of the guilds that want to stay alive will take on such a job. Even the lone mercs with nothing to lose wouldn't be that reckless. Carvix scoffed, his antennae twitching. Do you really believe humans are that invincible? They're just another species, flesh, bone, and blood like the rest of us. Thalrex leaned back, crossing his forearms over his chest, his exoskeleton creaking slightly with the movement. I never said they were invincible. They're very much mortal, but the consequences of killing one. His voice dropped to a near whisper, are far worse than you can imagine. Carvix frowned, leaning forward. What consequences? Why not just do the job, collect the payment, and be done with it? Thalrex's mandibles clicked softly as he considered his words. Because the only way to ensure you kill a human and live to spend the payment is to vaporize them from orbit, and even then, you'd better hope there's no trace left. After that, you'd have to flee this galaxy, permanently. And even that might not be enough. Carvix stared at Thalrex, trying to gauge whether the older alien was serious or just toying with him. You're joking. You can't be serious. Does your homeworld even have basic education? What does that have to do with anything? Thalrex sighed, his patience thinning. Everything. Indulge me for a moment. Did they teach you anything about the history of the Piran Accord? Carvix shrugged, his armor clinking softly. Only that it fell apart centuries ago. What does that have to do with anything? Thalrex gestured to the bartender for another round and took a long sip before continuing. The drink was thick and viscous, leaving a faint blue residue on the edge of his mandibles. The Piran Accord was a powerful alliance, one that controlled nearly half the systems in the Spiral Arm. They were unrivaled in strength, diplomacy, and technological prowess. Then they made the mistake of underestimating the humans. Carvix raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued despite himself. Go on. Thalrex leaned forward, his voice lowering conspiratorially. The humans were new to the galactic scene back then, barely out of their own star system. The Accord saw them as an easy target, a fledgling species ripe for exploitation. They annexed a few of the outer colonies, thinking it would be a quick and easy victory. But the humans didn't fight back right away. They bided their time, gathered intelligence, learned the strengths and weaknesses of their oppressors. Carvix's eyes widened slightly, leaning in closer. So what happened? Thalrex's voice dropped even lower. The humans retaliated, but not with fleets or armies. No, they struck at the Accord's foundations. They hacked into their economic systems, crashed entire markets, and turned member species against each other. They spread misinformation, sowed discord, and triggered civil wars on a dozen worlds. All the while, the Accord had no idea who was behind it. By the time they realized it was the humans, it was too late. The Accord's infrastructure was in ruins, and their member worlds were too busy fighting each other to mount a defense. Carvix's antennae twitched, his mind racing as he processed the information. And the humans? Thalrex smirked, his mandibles clicking in amusement. They barely lifted a finger. Once the dust settled, they stepped in, offering aid and rebuilding the shattered worlds, on their terms, of course. In less than a decade, they had turned a galaxy-spanning alliance into a protectorate under their control. And they did it without firing a single shot in direct combat. Carvix sat back in his seat, silent for a moment as he absorbed Thalrex's words. The dim light of the cantina cast long shadows across his face, making his expression difficult to read. That's just one story. There must be some way to deal with them. Thalrex's expression turned serious, his gaze locking onto Carvix's. There's always a way to kill a human, Carvix. The problem is surviving the aftermath. You might succeed in the kill, but then what? The human network will come after you. They'll hunt you down, ruin you in ways you can't even imagine. You'll be lucky if they leave you with your life, and even then, it'll be a life in hiding, looking over your shoulder every minute of every day. Carvix took a deep breath, trying to maintain his composure. I see your point. But this human has made powerful enemies. There must be something I can do. Thalrex shook his head slowly, his eyes narrowing. The best advice I can give you is to insult them, challenge them to a duel if you must, but never, never, accept a contract to kill them. If you're lucky, the human might even respect you for confronting them directly. They have a strange sense of honor, those humans. But if you kill one... He leaned in, his voice deadly serious. You'll unleash a storm you won't survive. Carvix looked down at the table, his thoughts racing. He had taken on countless dangerous contracts before, faced down enemies that would make most beings quiver in fear. But something about this situation felt different, more dangerous than anything he had encountered before. What exactly happened to the Piran Accord? Carvix asked, his voice quiet. Thalrex sighed, his gaze distant as he recalled the events of centuries past. The Piran Accord crumbled from within. The humans exploited every weakness, every crack in their foundation. The member species turned on each other, and the Accord was too fragmented to hold them together. Eventually, the humans orchestrated a coup within the Accord's leadership, installing a puppet government that answered directly to them. It was a masterstroke of subterfuge and manipulation, and by the time anyone realized what had happened, it was too late. Carvix's eyes narrowed, his mind working through the implications. And what about the species that tried to fight back? The ones that didn't fall in line? Thalrex's mandibles clicked softly as he leaned back in his seat. They were wiped out, systematically and ruthlessly. The humans didn't do it themselves, of course. They used other species, mercenaries, and even some of the Accord's own military forces to do the dirty work. The few species that managed to survive were forced into servitude, their worlds annexed and their cultures erased. It was as if they had never existed. Carvix felt a cold chill run down his spine. He had heard rumors about the humans' ruthlessness, but this was the first time he had heard such detailed accounts. And the Crimson Reavers? What happened to them? Thalrex's expression darkened, his gaze hardening. The Reavers were one of the first to take a contract to kill a human. They succeeded, but it cost them everything. Within days of completing the job, their leader was found dead, poisoned by an unknown substance. Their base was raided by an unknown force, their ships sabotaged, and their accounts drained. Those who survived were hunted down one by one, until the Reavers were nothing more than a cautionary tale told in dark corners of the galaxy. Karvik swallowed hard, the weight of Thalrex's words settling heavily on his shoulders. So, you're saying it's not just the humans we have to worry about. It's their allies, their influence. Everything. Thalrex nodded, his eyes never leaving Karvik's. Exactly. Humans don't operate alone. They have connections, resources, and a network that spans the galaxy. And when one of their own is killed, they don't just retaliate, they dismantle the very foundations of their enemies. It's not just about killing the assassin, it's about ensuring that no one ever tries it again. Karvik looked down at his hands, the armored fingers clenching and unclenching as he processed everything Thalrex had told him. The contract he had been offered was tempting, more credits than he had ever seen in his life. But now, those credits felt like a death sentence. What about the human themselves? Karvik asked after a long silence. This one. Adrian Kane. What makes him so dangerous? Thalrex's eyes narrowed at the mention of the name. Adrian Kane is no ordinary human. He's a diplomat, yes, but he's also a strategist, a manipulator. He's been responsible for orchestrating alliances that have shifted the balance of power in the galaxy. He knows how to play the long game, how to turn enemies into allies and allies into enemies. Killing him wouldn't just be eliminating a target, it would be declaring war on a web of connections that stretches across the stars. Karvik felt his stomach churn. He had heard of Kane, whispers of his influence, rumors of his power. But hearing it from Thalrex, someone who had seen the consequences of underestimating humans firsthand, made it all too real. You've met him? Karvik asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Thalrex nodded slowly. Once. It was during a negotiation between the Velker Dominion and the Coalition. Kane was there, representing the Coalition's interests. He was calm, collected, and terrifyingly intelligent. He knew exactly what each side wanted, how far they were willing to go, and how to get them to agree to his terms without them even realizing they had been played. By the time the negotiations were over, the Dominion had signed away more than they had intended, and the Coalition walked away with everything they wanted. Karvik's mind raced. He had faced down warlords, criminal syndicates, and rogue AI, but this was something different. Adrian Kane wasn't just a target, he was a linchpin in a web of alliances and power plays that could unravel the galaxy if removed. And you think killing him would bring down that entire web? Karvik asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Thalrex's gaze was steely. I don't think, Karvik. I know. The moment Kane dies, the humans will activate every contingency plan they have. They'll use every connection, every resource, to ensure that whoever was responsible is not only eliminated but erased from existence. They won't just kill you, they'll dismantle everything you've ever known, everything you've ever built. Karvik felt a cold sweat break out on his brow. The weight of the contract suddenly felt oppressive, like a noose tightening around his neck. So what do I do? Thalrex sighed, his expression softening slightly. Walk away, Karvik. Let this one go. There are plenty of other contracts, other opportunities. But once you cross this line, there's no going back. The humans will make sure of that. Despite Thalrex's warnings, Karvik couldn't shake the allure of the reward. He spent the next few days gathering more information, hoping to find some flaw in the stories that would make the risk worthwhile. But the more he learned, the more uneasy he became. Adrian Kane, the human diplomat in question, was no ordinary target. He had a reputation for being shrewd, always 2 steps ahead of his opponents. He was a key figure in negotiations that were shifting the balance of power on Thaler Prime, and the Council wanted him gone because he was too effective at unifying resistance against them. Karvik decided to take a different approach. Instead of a direct attack, he would meet with Kane, try to understand his enemy before making a decision. It was a dangerous move, but Carvix needed to know what he was up against. He tracked Kane to a remote settlement on Thaler Prime, a quiet place far from the political turmoil. The human was staying in a modest dwelling, surrounded by only a few close aides. Carvix approached under the cover of night, slipping past the minimal security with ease. Inside, he found Kane alone in his study, surrounded by datapads and star charts. The diplomat looked up as Carvix entered, not with fear, but with a calm that unnerved the bounty hunter. "I was expecting you," Kane said, setting aside his work. Carvix didn't bother with pleasantries. "You're a hard man to find, Kane. And you're a dangerous man to meet," Kane replied, his tone even. "But I doubt you've come here to kill me." "Not yet, at least." Carvix studied him, trying to discern any sign of weakness. "You know why I'm here. The council wants you dead." Kane nodded. "I'm aware. But I'm curious, why haven't you tried to kill me yet?" Carvix hesitated, then decided there was no point in lying. "Because of the stories. They say humans are untouchable, that anyone who kills one of you ends up destroyed." Kane smiled faintly. "Smart of you to do your research. Tell me, Carvix, do you know why those stories exist? Enlighten me." Kane leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "Humans are not invincible. We bleed, we die, just like any other species. But what makes us different is our connections. Our allies, our networks, our influence. When a human is killed, it's not just an isolated incident. It sends ripples through the fabric of our society. We are a species that values loyalty, and when one of our own is targeted, we don't rest until justice is served." Carvix listened intently, intrigued despite himself. "So it's about revenge?" "Not just revenge," Kane corrected. "It's about making sure it never happens again. We use every tool at our disposal, diplomacy, espionage, economics, to ensure that those responsible are held accountable. It's not a curse, as some might think. It's simply the way we've learned to survive in a galaxy that's often hostile to newcomers." Carvix considered this, weighing Kane's words against everything he had heard. "You think that's enough to protect you from someone like me?" Kane's expression remained calm. "I think you're smart enough to realize that killing me won't end with my death. It will start something much bigger, something you can't control." Carvix felt a knot in his stomach, the certainty he had always relied on slipping away. "You're saying the reward isn't worth the risk?" Kane nodded. "Exactly. Walk away, Carvix. There are other contracts, other opportunities. But once you cross this line, there's no going back." Carvix left Kane's dwelling in the early hours of the morning, his mind racing. The human's words echoed in his head, blending with the warnings he had received from Thalrex and others. Every instinct told him to walk away, to abandon the contract and forget about the reward. But the lure of the credits, the promise of a life of luxury, was hard to resist. He returned to his ship, a sleek, black vessel designed for speed and stealth. As he prepared for takeoff, he reviewed the details of the contract one last time. The payout was astronomical, more than enough to retire on a peaceful world far from the violence and chaos of his current life. But Kane's calm demeanor, his certainty that killing him would lead to disaster, gnawed at Carvix's resolve. The human wasn't afraid because he knew something Carvix didn't, something that made the risk far greater than the reward. With a deep breath, Carvix powered down his ship. He wasn't going to take the contract. It was a decision that went against everything he had trained for, everything he believed in as a bounty hunter. But it was the right decision. As he left Thaler Prime behind, Carvix felt a strange sense of relief. He had chosen to live, to avoid the fate that had befallen so many others who had underestimated the humans. The galaxy was vast, full of other opportunities, other contracts that didn't carry the same deadly consequences. Months passed, and the memory of the contract began to fade. Carvix continued his work, taking on jobs that didn't involve humans, gradually building a new life for himself. But the decision to walk away from that one contract never left him. It lingered in the back of his mind, a reminder of the choice he had made. One day, while on a mission in a distant sector, Carvix received a message from an unknown sender. It was a simple text, just a few words, but it sent a chill down his spine. "You made the right choice, Carvix. Humans don't forget." Carvix stared at the message, his heart pounding. The implications were clear. Kane, or someone connected to him, had been watching, waiting to see if Carvix would follow through with the contract. The fact that he hadn't meant that he had passed some unspoken test. He deleted the message, but the lesson remained. The unwritten rule was real, and it was one that every species in the galaxy learned sooner or later: you don't kill humans. It wasn't just about survival, it was about understanding the balance of power in the galaxy, the unseen forces that shaped the fate of entire civilizations. And as long as Carvix lived, he knew he would never forget that lesson.
Thank you so much for joining us on this cosmic journey. If you enjoyed the ride, please hit that subscribe button and share the adventure with others. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more incredible stories. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the stars.